Welcome to the Handed Down Kitchen, where we bring recipes out of the past and into the kitchen. Today we're going to have a go at a Victorian recipe for cheesecake, and as you'll see, Victorian cheesecakes are quite different from the cheesecakes we're used to today. The recipe we've followed is more similar to that of a Yorkshire curd tart. We found this recipe in our copy of Warren's Model Cookery and Housekeeping book, which was published in 1868. This is the oldest book in our collection of cookbooks, and for that reason it's rather delicate, as you can see here, but so would we be if we were 152 years old. And as you can see, it has loads of interesting information at the beginning, but getting back to today's recipe, it's in two parts. The first stage is to make the curd for the cheesecakes, which is a Yorkshire recipe, and the second is to prepare and bake the actual cheesecakes. We've found similar recipes for cheesecakes in our three oldest books. The one that we're using today, as well as our copy of High Class Cookery Recipes, which was published in 1909, which we're showing you here, and our copy of a second Dudley Book of Recipes, which was published in 1914. And the recipes in these books are all very similar to one another. You make a curd first and then mix this with some other ingredients before cooking in a puff pastry tart case. So what we can see is up until the 1920s, cheesecakes looked just like what you're going to see today. And then something very strange happens. Recipes for cheesecakes completely disappear for half a century. There are no recipes for cheesecakes at all in our 1920s, 1930s, 40s, 50s and 60s cookery books. And then all of a sudden they reappear in the 1970s, and here's our 70s book, The Complete Colour Cookbook, which was published in 1977. And flicking to the right page, you can see that they returned with a major facelift. These cheesecakes look and sound a lot more like what we're used to. And they're here to stay. They remain popular in the 1980s. Here's our 80s book, The Best of Cooking, which was published in 1987 and was our reference for our last recipe video for Viennese whirls or Viennese biscuits. And again, the cheesecake recipes in this book, and there are a few, are just like what we're used to seeing today. You have your cream cheese filling and either a base of digestive biscuits or a thin layer of sponge. But getting back to our Victorian recipe, if you're going to make this, you will need the following ingredients: 2 pints of water, 4 eggs, 2 pints of fresh milk, ideally unpasteurised and as fresh as possible, 1 lemon, 3 tablespoonfuls of double cream, some nutmeg, 1 tablespoonful of ratafia, which is any sort of almond liqueur, 113 grams of currants, and some puff pastry. And to make our time a bit easier, we used ready-made pastry, but of course you can make your own puff pastry and really get into the Victorian spirit. To start making your curd, boil your water. Next, beat 2 of the eggs, once you've beaten them, stir them into your milk. Turn off the heat and then pour the milk mixture into the water. The recipe then says to add 2 tablespoonfuls of lemon juice to the pan, but trust us, you're going to need more than that for the milk to curdle. We added the juice of a whole lemon, and you can always add more. You should see the curd or cheese forming almost immediately. Once this has cooled down, put a sieve over a large bowl and then very slowly pour the contents of the pan over it so that the curd is collected in the sieve. This recipe should make half a pint of curd, which is equivalent to 1 cupful. Moving on to the next stage of our recipe, set the curd to one side and then roll out your puff pastry and cut it into rounds. Then press the pastry rounds into well-buttered tartlet tins. Crack the 2 remaining eggs in a bowl and whisk these together. The recipe says to actually use 4 eggs for this stage, but having tried this before, this turned out far too eggy. So reducing this to 2 gives you the same effect almost, but with less eggy flavour. Then add the curd to the egg and mix these together to combine. Next, add in the cream. Then grate in 1/4 of a nutmeg. Then add in your ratafia. Any almond liqueur or amaretto is fine, we used di Serrano. And finally, mix in your currants. Once everything's been combined, spoon the mixture into the pastry cases, about 2 teaspoonfuls in each. Then bake in a moderate oven at 180 degrees Celsius, which is 350 Fahrenheit or gas mark 4, for about 15 minutes or until the pastry is golden. Once they're done, leave to cool down completely before eating. Just to finish ours off, we sprinkled a little grated nutmeg over the tops of ours. And there they are. If you asked for a cheesecake before 1920, this is what you would get. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please remember to leave us a like, and if you're interested in seeing us recreate more antique recipes, subscribe to our channel and be sure to click the bell button so you're notified each time we have a new recipe video ready for you. And you can find full instructions for this recipe on our website, linked in the description box below.